Divine High Commissioner Canada to Guyana, other members of the Diplomatic Corps, members of Parliament, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished members of our. I welcome you to this event on behalf of the Institute of International Relations, and we're confident that this brings together the graduates and members of staff from the Institute of International Relations programs which were delivered in Guyana and Suriname. As you may be aware, we have 40 graduates from the MSc programs which were delivered here in Guyana and Suriname, and many of those have gone on to PhDs and MPhil degrees and are in various stages of their research activity. We've also published some of the research papers of the Guyana cohort, and this publication was launched right here late last year with an excellent presentation, feature address by Ambassador Hart, the United States Ambassador to Guyana. This activity today was conceptualized by the Guyana Alumni Group. And today's presenters, as I mentioned, include students from Guyana, Trinidad, students and alumni from Suriname, Guyana, Trinidad, Barbados, and Jamaica. We feel, indeed, that as the Institute of International Relations undertakes the kind of outreach which is necessary in the changing hemispheric environment in which we find ourselves, that every opportunity must be taken to provide new perspectives and to present the cutting-edge kind of research which we find particularly lacking in the Caribbean context. We feel that every opportunity must be made to continue the discourse with or among scholars and the Caribbean community, public at large, in an attempt to shape some of the new integration and new thinking on integration which is necessary in this environment. We note that the hemisphere today is witnessing some significant reconfigurations to its regional political economy, and we see a growing recognition by states of the need to speak with one voice. We've seen the emergence of, and they say it's now a spaghetti bowl, a plethora of new regional integration efforts, including the ALBA, the UNASUR, the re-engineered SICA, which is a Central American Integration System, and more recently the Pacific Alliance, and which involves and includes Latin American states, and the new community of Latin American and Caribbean states itself. We've noted that these emerging institutional arrangements are now seen as developing new contours of the regional arena and are being redefined by formal and informal transboundary practices that provide a rich variety of forms of regionalism and have gone beyond trade and finance. And in that context, they have moved away from the traditional forms of regional integration to include a multidimensional process. And that includes security, the environment, health, infrastructure, and other issues which add to the new regional agenda. In fact, one can posit that the new trend in regionalism is anchored in new conceptualizations of development, regional cohesion, and identity formation. But there are those who argue, however, that this new round of regional integration efforts currently being undertaken could complicate efforts by creating overlap, adding pressures on small states like those of the Caribbean, both in terms of human and financial resources, especially when already countries are threatened with economic downturn. So that the view is that new forms of integration only add to the so-called spaghetti bowl of regional agenda efforts. But today, we will see from some of the papers which are going to be presented on the new range of issues, that there have been scholarly work being undertaken, which we find important and not to be left in the halls of academia, but rather to be articulated in the wider society and to receive feedback. And I'm confident that the young scholars here who will present today will be happy to receive comments, criticisms, and maybe recommendations for reshaping their work as they go forward. This morning, we have with us His Excellency, the High Commissioner, Daniel Devine. David Devine, I'm sorry. Daniel Devine is another colleague who does some work in Latin America. Sorry, David Devine, who has been appointed, or who was appointed in 2011 as the Canadian High Commissioner to Guyana and the Canadian representative to Caricom. He's worked in both the public and private sectors and joined the Department of External Affairs and International Trade in 1989 to work with the Free Trade Agreement Management Branch and the Tariff and Market Access Division. From 1995 to 2000, High Commissioner Devine was the Deputy Director, then Acting Director of Investment Trade Policy, before becoming Director of the Softwood Lumber Division in 2000. In 2003, he became Director of Trade Policy Consultations and Liaison, and in 2007, joined the Canadian Embassy in Tokyo, Japan as Consular and Senior Trade Commissioner. This morning it is a pleasure and an honor for me to introduce High Commissioner Devine to make the formal address and to open our seminar. Thank you very much.
Director of the Institute of International Relations, University of West Indies, representatives of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, representatives of the Ministry of Education, representatives of the Caricom Secretariat, members of the Diplomatic Corps, especially Ambassador Hart, members of the Chief of Staff of the Guyana Defense Force, Commodore Best, members of the Guyana Defense Force, members of the Guyana Police Force, chief professors, current students and alumni, ladies and gentlemen, members of the press. Let me begin today by thanking Dr. Markerton and the Institute of International Relations of the West Indies for inviting me to speak here today. While my contribution, I look forward to hearing from some brilliant minds in the Caribbean on various topics related to the theme of Caribbean integration, including sovereignty, development, and the social impact of regional integration. I would like to take an opportunity given to me now. Oh, thank you very much. I think I do need a glass of water. That's good. To make a request that we do more than just listen to these presentations, but that we engage actively in this crucial conversation. This seminar goes beyond merely academic inquiry because we are interested in more than just theories. This seminar is about the future of a vibrant, diverse region with the potential to become significant players on the world stage. The idea of regional integration is not new to the Caribbean. In fact, I think to some extent it is even natural. The region's people have been traveling and migrating from one country to another since the dawn of an independent Caribbean. And why not? Are you not brothers and sisters? At the end of the day, do you not have a shared heritage? I've met more than one person here in Guyana with family in other Caribbean countries or who originate in other countries but have come to Guyana to make a livelihood. In its own way, this is a form of integration. Excuse me. Additionally, many years ago, spectacular Caribbean minds such as Dr. Eric Williams and Norman Washington Manley began taking chances on a dream of Caribbean-wide unity. And since then, others have, albeit in different ways and often with insufficient resources, attempted to carry out this dream of a unified Caribbean. The Caricom Secretariat endeavors to provide the foundation on which to bridge the separation of the regional states. National law enforcement agencies collaborate with one another with international third-party agencies, sharing information and skills to tackle their common security concerns. And we would not be here today if it was not without the ceaseless mission of the Institute for International Relations of the University of the West Indies to ensure their academic program is grounded in real-world concerns, training future policymakers. We hope to better be prepared to support the vision of their forefathers. And I would be remiss if I did not mention the role of the international community in supporting regional activities. The United States seems to have a never-ending string of regional projects, indeed far too many to be able to name, from education to health to business to security. The Americans are there. The UK has also been giving invaluable assistance to the security sector, particularly with regards to legislation. The European Union has been working tirelessly on private sector development. Canada is, as always, steadfastly committed to any effort of regional development and security. This commitment is signaled through a regional approach to programming in which the CEDA Caribbean Regional Program delivers results at the country level, while contributing to Caribbean cooperation and integration efforts, and strengthening the capacity of regional institutions. A few of our Caribbean regional programs include the Caribbean Disaster Risk Management Program to enhance the capacity of governments to deal with natural disasters, the Caribbean Institutional Leadership Development Program, which provides future leaders of the region with skills they need to address regional issues. The Caribbean community is creating a Pan-Caribbean Public Health Agency, a preventative integrative health agency, and the Canada Caribbean Community Leadership Scholarships, providing research exchanges at colleges and university levels. In 2007, Prime Minister Harper announced that Canada would provide $600 million Canadian in development assistance for the Caribbean Caricom countries. While it's focused on promoting sustainable economic growth and enhancing security through strengthening the rule of law and better management of such things as natural disasters, the program is well aligned to address the challenges of the region. Now, Canada takes an active interest in the Caribbean region because we share the hemisphere, and if the Caribbean prospers, so does Canada. And conversely, if Canada suffers, if the Caribbean suffers, so does Canada. To put it another way, as a young man in the village of Buxton wisely told me last month, as you are invested in us, we are invested in you. He was absolutely correct. Now, I know that I am not as much of an expert as the persons that you'll soon be hearing from, so I'll only give you highlights of what I perceive to be some of the main challenges and possibilities facing the Caribbean when it comes to integration. First, let's talk about the possibilities. Number one, democratic governance. Integration would promote democratic governance by virtue of a shared political infrastructure. In order to ensure that all parties are given equal weight, a certain standard of transparency and accountability has to be established. There would have to be provisions for discussion, consultation, participation, the very roots of democracy itself. Democratic governance is one of Canada's key areas of focus in the hemisphere. That is why CEDA is collaborating with several Caribbean countries on the strengthening of local governance, and why Canada has invested heavily in the Organization of American States Unit for the promotion of democracy. I do believe that an open and ongoing discussion in the Caribbean would revitalize regional democracy, and with democracy comes human rights protection and greater prosperity. So that brings us to the second point, prosperity. I believe that a lack of greater economic integration is standing in the way of huge gains for the Caribbean. First of all, trade has the power to truly drive prosperity in the region. Currently, interregional trade in the Caribbean compared to world trade is around 16%. In 2011, the Inter-American Development Bank published a study which suggested that the interregional trade in the Caribbean is only at 50% of its potential. So it is clear that the Caribbean is currently losing out on significant economic growth. From Canada's experience with free trade agreements, all parties involved benefit from wealth and job creation. And here's why. Because in order for trade to work at an optimal level, it has to be between equal parties. That is why free trade agreements between Canada and the Americas have been so fruitful, not just financially, but also in terms of the raising of standards of agreements to ensure high levels of protection for workers, preservation of the environment, and promotion of sustainable development. The Caribbean Single Market Economy, the CSME, is a step in the right direction, but it needs a more comprehensive integration framework. It is specifically to this end that Canada, through CETA, has been collaborating with Caricom on a Caribbean Trade and Competitiveness Program, the CTCP. This program promotes productivity with an environmentally friendly approach and not only seeks to strengthen the CSME's framework, but also its ties to other global markets, because even if the CSME was fully integrated and functional, it would still need a larger market to do business with. Additionally, the CTCP promotes corporate social responsibility, which can level the playing field for the Caribbean and build on its negotiating potential. Caribbean states individually may not be the most powerful nations in the world, but with an integrated market, the region as a whole would benefit from greater bargaining power in the international arena. Number 3 follows naturally from prosperity, and it is security. Security is a high priority issue not only for the Caribbean, but also for the greater Western Hemisphere, including Canada. The Caribbean faces a number of security challenges that can only be met effectively with greater organization of approaches. Most importantly, and I cannot stress this enough, is how the Caribbean identifies insecurity. In today's world, insecurity is not a threat to national security. Rather, insecurity is a threat to the safety of the region's people. Insecurity means that persons are vulnerable to the porous borders of their respective countries, which facilitate transnational crime. Vulnerable to being trafficked to from other countries. Vulnerable to being co-opted into the illicit drug trade. Vulnerable to being caught in the crossfire of violent crimes. Insecurity also means depending on fairer weather. Guyana just recently experienced some exceptionally high tides, which threw a wrench in the flow of traffic along the East Coast and to some extent Georgetown. So what about if the tides are higher next time? You cannot be at the mercy of climate conditions. You have to be prepared to handle the worst. Insecurity also means not being able to support yourself, not finding employment, not being paid well enough to stay out of a life of crime. With greater prosperity and greater bargaining power, the Caribbean would be able to secure itself against all these existing challenges. Additionally, we've already had examples of how effective regional integration can be when countries agree upon common priorities and pool resources in institutions designed to advance them. For example, the RSS has proven quite effective in the fight against drug trafficking in the Eastern Caribbean. I'm pleased that Canada has been able to support the RSS and trust that member states will overcome the impediments to providing stable and predictable funding. There are many more reasons to pursue regional integration, but the ones that I've spoken about are, in my opinion, reason enough. Now what are the main challenges facing regional integration? I won't carry on this debate all by myself, so I'm going to speak briefly about three main challenges to regional integration. First is the fear of loss, fear of losing territorial integrity, fear of losing sight of cultural distinctiveness, and fear of losing profits to the states that might be better off economically speaking. I think that if we turn the conversation around to focus on the gains in the long run, we could then negate these fears. First of all, there's no need to assume one's borders or cultural identity to join together with others. France does not cease to be France just because it's part of the European Union. Secondly, a single market can only serve to cut the cost to individual governments. Take a look at the members of the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, enjoying some synergies or benefits of working together. The second hurdle relates to the first in a way. It is the image of separateness that I perceive here in the Caribbean, but I'm under the impression that it is superficial. Deep down, the Caribbean people know they are one. Caribbean institutions need to reflect this inner reality, to rethink the way they project themselves and stand together and move forward as one. I can best convey the sort of unification I mean with just 5 words. The West Indies cricket team. The West Indies consist of strong players who bring their own unique skills to the team. They support one another, they work towards a common goal in ways that let you know that they fully understand that they can only succeed if they work together. And do you think that Sri Lanka cares which particular country Chris Gayle is born? No, it doesn't matter who comes from which country. All that matters is that they are the West Indies, and Sri Lanka better watch out. The final hurdle is political will. We elect governments to pass and enforce laws, manage the economy, and to look out for those who are unable to fend for themselves. However, governments and multilateral organizations cannot do everything. For integration to succeed, the private sector, academia, unions, and the public, and other stakeholders need to see the benefits and be part of its implementation. So, there's much to do. However, I believe the Caribbean is equal to the task. The message I want to leave all with today is that Canada also looks forward to making an integrated Caribbean a reality, and will continue to do our part to that end. We have many people here in the audience who are also doing their part. We are accomplishing so much together, and I'm confident that a unified Caribbean awaits us in the future. As Norman Manley once said, unity is strength. Thank you.